Namaste students, myself Sunil Kumar from the Department of Computer Science. Today we are moving to the next session or second session based on the chapter Interface Python with MySQL. And today's our topic is continuation of last topic, steps for creating database connected applications. Same topic we are going to continue in this session. So let us move to the topic. Review of last session. In the last session, we mainly discussed about the steps for creating a database connectivity applications. How we can create the database connectivity from Python, from the Python programming. How we are going to connect the database. That topic we just started in a previous session. In that mainly 4 steps we discussed. There are 7 steps are there. In that 7 steps we mainly discussed the 4 steps. First one is what we discussed. First step is start Python. We have to start the Python program. We can use either you can use Spider IDE or any IDE that you are comfortable. Normal typing which is required, that is required, and also you have to install the connectivity application like Conda or PIP that is required, that you have to install. So these are the main 2 things you have to do before starting the Python program. And remember here, whenever if you're going to write the program connectivity, you can use any editor. We can use any editor also, we can possible to use either Spider. In lab we are using with the Spider. You can use the Spider IDE or anything is also possible to type the program. Next one is import the packages required for database programming. After that we have to install the database packages. Which package is required, that we have to import. For example, in case of database connection, we mainly require connection MySQL.connector database. Mainly application or package is required. MySQL.connector, that is a package is required. We have to import that one. So we can import. So we can use the statement like this: import MySQL.connector. That is a statement. Or we can use any alias name like SQL or anything we can give, or my connection, whatever it is. Anything identifier you can give to identify that one. So by using that one, we can import the packages. After that, open a connection database. So you have to provide the connection to database. After that, after importing that, you have to provide the connection by using the connect function. There is a function called connect function. So by using the connect function, you have to provide the connection. So if you take the connect function have different attributes. There are different attributes are there. The first one is host name. You have to provide the host name. After that, username you should provide username, and password and database name. These are the different mainly 4 attributes or parameters are there that we have to provide. So after providing a connection, we can check whether connection is established or not. We can check whether the connection is established or not. If connection established, then we can continue the programming. If not established, whenever sometimes error will come because we are connecting to same device or multiple device. So sometimes connection problem will be there. So to identify that one, we are using one function is connected. Is connected is the function that is used to connect or check whether connection is established or not, or connection is done or not. If connection is done, we can move with the next step. The next one is create a cursor instance. Cursor is mainly to read the data. Whenever if you're going to read the data, that data reading is based on the cursor variable. Data reading is basically based on the cursor variable. Through the cursor variable, we are going to read the data. And so these are the topics what we discussed in a previous session. And in this session, we are mainly discussing about how to execute a query, how we can execute a query, and also extract data from result set. So whenever if you are going to execute the query, data will be stored in result set. From that, how we can extract the data from result set and clean up the environment. Clean up means closing the program or closing the file or database connection. These are the different functions, or these are the different mainly 3 steps remaining that we are going to discuss in this session. So connecting to MySQL from Python, we have to connecting here. In that step 5 we are going to discuss here. Till step 4 is finished. Next here we are going to discuss about step 5. Once you have created a cursor, first I told open a connection, then you have to create a cursor. Then after that, once you have created a cursor, you can execute SQL query using the execute function. There is a function called execute here. By using the execute function, we can execute the queries. Any query we can write, select star from table, or any query what we discussed in the MySQL or last chapter. In data SQL chapter I discussed. So any queries we can execute. Which query is required, that we can execute or insert, whatever it may be. That type of query we can execute. So here syntax is cursor object. You can see the syntax cursor object. We have to use the cursor object to, for example, if you want to write anything or if you want to read anything from the table, then we have to use the cursor object. Based on the cursor object, we can read the data or we can write the data, like a file pointer. Cursor object dot execute, cursor object dot execute, and you can write the SQL query string. You can write the SQL query string. For example, here cursor dot execute. Here is cursor dot execute. Select star from student. Select star from student. Remember here cursor is the cursor object. Here we use the cursor, that is the object, cursor object. And next one is select star from student. Select star from student, that is a query, SQL query. So select star from student means we are going to retrieve all the data. If you want to retrieve all the data, that is, if you know that one, then you also automatically how you can retrieve remaining data, that also possible. So here select star from student, that is the query for to display or to execute, or we can to retrieve the data from the table. We are mainly using the select star from student. So that is a query. So we can write the example like this: cursor dot execute, cursor dot execute, in double quote select star from student. So this is the query what we are using, or statement what we are using to retrieve the data. After, see, above code will execute the SQL query and store retrieve records. So remember, in the cursor object, remember, whenever you're going to retrieve the data, that data will be stored in cursor object. Which data you are going to retrieve, that data is known as result set. Remember, that is result set here, and that will be stored in cursor object. For example, which cursor object you are using, in that cursor object data will be stored. Here we are using the cursor object as cursor, so data will be stored in cursor, or that variable name data will be stored. The result set refers to a logical set of records. Result set refers to logical set of records that are fetched from the database, by the executing an SQL query and made available to the application program. So what is a result set? Result set means whenever you are going to execute the query, data query will be executed and data will be fetched from the database, or normally data will be fetched from the database. After fetching the data from database, data is not displayed to the users, but the data is stored in cursor object. From the cursor object, the program can execute that one, or program can use that one. So that data is stored in cursor object, that is actually known as result set. So that is, whenever data is stored in cursor object, that is known as result set. So the data will be stored in cursor object, or we can say that is a result set that we have to use. That program can use that one. Step 6, sixth step, extract data from result set. So data will be available in cursor object. Already we know that once we are going to retrieve the data, once result of the query is available from the result set stored in cursor object. So remember, when you are going to execute the query, after execution of query, data won't be displayed to the users, but program can use that data, because data will be stored in cursor object. So from that we have to extract. All the data will be stored in cursor object. That all the data can be used. That all the data can be extract and we have to use later. So that extracting is done here. So you can extract the data from result set using the fetch function. One function is there, that is known as fetch. You can see fetch 4 dots I give, means fetch is not a function. In that fetch there are 3 functions are there. There are 3 functions. One is fetch all, fetch one, and fetch many. These are the mainly 3 functions we are using to fetch the data that is stored in cursor object. Remember, cursor object will store the data. That data can be extracted by using the fetch functions. Here, extract the data from result set. Remember, in that first one, fetch all, that I told we have to use mainly different functions. One is a fetch function. So, fetch function, there are three types. There are three types of fetch functions are available. The first one is fetch all, next one is fetch one, and fetch many. There are three functions are there. So how we can use that one? So here is the syntax. Data is equal to, data means object, any variable, that is equal to cursor dot fetch all, cursor object. Cursor here means cursor object dot fetch all. Cursor here means a cursor object. It will return that all records retrieved as per the query in tuple form. Remember, whenever you are going to retrieve the data, for example, select star, same example I use. If you use the select star, all the data, all the table data will be retrieved. All the data can be available, or that all the data we can fetch all the data. Whichever data is stored in cursor object, all the data can be retrieved, and that will be displayed using that will be displayed in the form of tuples. Remember, if you retrieve the data, all the data will be retrieved in the form of tuple form. Already we discussed what is a tuple last year, what is a list, and what is a string, and also dictionaries. These mainly four topics were discussed in last year. So you know that what is a tuple. So I am not going to explain about the tuple here. Remember, data will be retrieved and stored in the form of tuples. That is, now data will be a tuple. Data, what you have stored data, that will be there in the form of tuples. Example, I will take here data. Data is an identifier here. Data is equal to cursor dot, cursor is the cursor object, dot fetch all, fetch all. That is not fetch ha, is a fetch all. That is a function that is used to retrieve all the records, or we can say extract all the records stored in result set. Here is the full example. You can see full example how we can use this one. So here import space MySQL.connector. I told first step you have to open the Python, start the Python. Next step here is a import MySQL.connector. So you have to import the MySQL.connector. I used as myConnect. So myConnect is alias name. One more name is given for MySQL.connector. So after that I have to connect the database connectivity. The next step, mycon equals to myconnect dot connect. We have to use connect function. In that localhost, user, password, and database. Remember, mainly three is the required, and fourth one is not necessary. That is not a mandatory. Means database is not mandatory. Host, user, password is compulsory. We have to use. Host means local host. Whenever data is present in the same system, we can use a local host. And whenever data is present in any other system, means we have to provide the other system's IP address. Then user. Next you have to give the username, password, and database. Next after that you have to create a cursor instance. We can create the cursor instance. Cursor is equal to mycon.cursor. Mycon is the connection object. Mycon.cursor. The next are there. After that you have to execute the query based on the cursor. Based on the cursor, we have to execute the query. Cursor.execute. Cursor.execute. Select star from student. I used select star from student, so it will display or extract all the data. Next, after that I used here fetch function, fetch all function. Data is equal to cursor dot fetch all. Cursor dot fetch all means it will fetch all the records, and that will be stored in data. Remember, if we use execute query, data will be stored in cursor. Then after, from the cursor, we have to store the data in data variable. So print total records. Just I use one sentence here, total records. So we can use a for function, for loop, for row in a data. Data is here tuple. We know that whenever if you are going to retrieve the data will be retrieved and stored in the form of tuples. Data will be retrieved and will stored in the form of tuples. So for row in data, print raw. We are going to print the rows. So all the row will be displayed. Output I can't show here. So output I will show whenever if you enter the lab, whenever we rejoin to the college. At that time I'll explain, because we are going to start the lab as soon as possible. So for row in a data, so we are going to print the data in the raw format. Data we are going to print. So it will display all the records one after another. Next one is extract data from result set. Extract data from result set. So here data is equal, not here, not dot here. Remember, just a mistake here. Data equals to cursor dot fetch one. Data equals to cursor dot fetch one means it's going to fetch one data. One data will be fetched. It will be return one record from the result set as a tuple or a list. Remember, whenever if you use one record, if you want to, for example, all the records are there, then if you want to fetch only one record, at that time we can use the fetch one function. Either we can use tuple or list. Either data will be displayed or stored in tuple or list. First it will return first record, next time if you fetch it will going to retrieve the next record and so on. Remember, first if you use it will retrieve the first record, once again if you use it will retrieve the second record, like that. If you use 10th time, so 10th record will be retrieved. This method returns only one record as a tuple. Remember, this method returns one record as a tuple. If no more records returns, no more records are there means it will return none. Remember, none is one more data type. So if there is no more records, then it will return in the form of none. Here is example. You can see example here. So import dot, everything is same. Import dot MySQL dot connector as my connect. So we are retrieving, we are connecting, we are importing a package. After that, we have provided the connection. MyCon is equal to myconnect dot connect. So we can use host, username, and password, database. Everything is same. Then cursor equal to mycon dot cursor. So cursor is initialized. Now after that, we are going to execute the query. Cursor dot execute select star from student. So student record we are going to display all. Then here you can see one by one. Data is equal to cursor dot fetch one. So first record will be fetched, and we can print that one as print first record data. So data is stored in the form of tuple or list. Data will be stored so that we can display. After that, once again here you can see one more. Data is equal to cursor dot fetch one, two times. Second time I give. That is for retrieving the second record. So like that, in a table how many records are there? All the records we can fetch one after another by using the fetch one function. The next one is extract record fetch many, or n number of records if you want to fetch. For example, if you want to fetch 3 records, 4 records, 5 records, either you can fetch all or fetch one is possible, or fetch many is one more type of function. Is equal data is equal to cursor dot fetch many. Data is equal to cursor dot fetch many. In bracket we have to provide the n. N is the number of rows, so number of records you have to fetch. This method accepts number of record to fetch and returns as a tuple, where each record itself is a tuple. Remember, whenever if you are going to retrieve the fetch many, we have to provide one n value, or how many numbers of records if you want to fetch. For example, 3 records, 4 records, that many number of records you should provide, and it will return the data in the form of tuple. It will return the data in the form of tuple, and each record itself is a tuple. Remember, each record is a different tuple here. Each record, like a fetch many only or fetch all only, each record has a different tuple. If there are no more records, not more record, then it returns an empty tuple. Remember, when you are going to display the details, for example, if you give 4, for example, fetch many if you given 4, then only 3 records are there, means last one it will return as empty tuple. There are 10 records are there. If you give 15 means 5 records will be empty one, or 5 empty tuple it will display. So without using any data won't be there. So 15 times it will be 15 record should display based on the number if provided. Here you can use this method. Same, I'm not going to explain what is my import.mysql.connector, then after that my connect.connect, then cursor.execute, everything is same. After that, next you can see here, data is equal to cursor.fetch many. Data is equal to cursor.fetch many, in bracket 4 is given. So 4 record will fetch. 4 records are going to fetch. Print total records, total record whatever it is. For row in data, print row. So we're going to print as a same thing. First we use the same method. We have to use a for loop and to print the data here. That is about printing and or fetching the records, many records. And next step here, next one is variable is equal to, so here also dot is given, sorry there's a mistake here. So variable is equal to cursor dot row count. Variable is equal to cursor dot row count. Here is a mistake, dot is given, so not a dot, it is equals to. The row count is a property of cursor object. The row count is a property of cursor object that returns the number of rows retrieved from the cursor so far. For example, row count means that is a function that is used to display the number of, or that is used to display the number of rows retrieved from so far. For example, if you retrieved 5 rows means it will display 5. If you retrieved 3 rows means it will display output as 3. For that purpose, we are mainly making use of row count. Here is the same. So I used here row count along with the fetch one. Fetch one I used same thing till execute, it will be same. Then after that, data is equal to cursor dot fetch one. The first record is going to fetch. Count cursor dot row count. Count is equal to cursor dot row count. So means it will count the row. Here value will be 1 because first record. So it will print first record count 1. Then record will be, data will be displayed. Next, data is equal to cursor dot fetch 1. So one more record is fetched. So if you are going to count, if you are going to use cursor dot count record, row count, if you given, once again if you are going to give the row count, so it will count will be 2. So like that, how many times if you use fetch 1, that number of times row will be displayed or row count will be displayed. Row count will be displayed based on the how many data you retrieved, how many records you retrieved. Based on that one, it will display the row count. Next one is step 7. Step 7, after you are go through with, for example, step 7 here it is clean up the environment. After all the fetch is finished, all the work is finished means next you have to clean the environment. After you are through with all processing, in this final step you need to close the connection established. Remember, once connection is opened, first you have to open a connection, then you have to do all the works. Later you have to close the connection like a files only. Like a files only, first you have to open a connection, you have to fetch or you have to work with all the records, and after that you have to close the connection. Syntax here it is connection object dot close. That is the syntax to close the connection. Here example here is a mycon dot close. Mycon is a connection object. By using that I am going to close here. These are the cleaning the environment. So by here we reach the end of session today. In this session mainly we discussed the 3 steps. You can see only 3 steps here. Execute a query. How we can execute the query? By using execute function. So execute function will be there. By using the execute function we have to execute the query. After executing the query, data will be stored in result set. Or after executing the query, data will be stored in the form of result set, and that will be stored inside the cursor object. That we have to fetch. Fetching the record by using the 3 functions. One is the fetch all, fetch one, and fetch many. There are 3 functions are there. By using any one of function based on the program or based on the programmer, which one is required, that we can use, and we can fetch the record and we can display the data to the users. After all the functions are over, or we can say all the work is finished, later you have to close the connection established. So which connection step that you should close? So these are the different steps for database connectivity. Based on this one, I'll give the worksheet, work out that one. We will meet in next session. Thank you.